Good morning and welcome back to a news update coming to life from Warsaw. I'm Angela Skujins. Allies in the coalition of the willing are meeting in London on Friday, where British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is expected to call for the strongest possible support for Ukraine. His proposals include removing Russian oil and gas from global markets, using frozen Russian assets to aid Kyiv, and supplying Ukraine with long-range missiles. Let's bring in our EU correspondent Angela Skujins, who is in Brussels. Good morning, Angela. Good to see you. So how likely is it that the countries will deliver?
Good morning. So this is an ambitious laundry list coming out of 10 Downing Street, particularly when it comes to supplying Ukraine with those long-range Tomahawk missiles, as well as mobilising Russia's frozen state assets. But that's not to say it won't happen in the future, and not from a lack of trying from the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, where he called for both of these measures in Brussels on Thursday. But when it comes to energy, anything is possible. This is particularly as the US President Donald Trump also on Thursday implemented the first US sanctions against Russia for that country's full-scale invasion of Ukraine since 2022, targeting two major oil producers in Russia, which comprise of 5% of the world's global output. Off the back of this, the EU also approved the 19th sanctions package against Russia, which aims to ban the import of Russian LNG into the EU by 2027. So anything is possible when it comes to these measures, but hopefully we'll get some clarification later today on what those leaders agree upon.
And you've been following talks in Brussels, where European leaders met yesterday to discuss, among other issues, using frozen Russian assets to fund a loan for Ukraine. So what concrete outcomes came out of that meeting?
Yes, so following that days-long meeting, we saw the conclusions. We saw in that document most of the motherhood statements supporting Ukraine that we've seen before. However, we saw weaker language when it came to the financial support for Ukraine. Previous draft conclusions that TVP World obtained from our sources included a clause stating that they would explore the possibility of using frozen Russian state assets to give Ukraine a €140 billion loan to fund that country's military needs over the next 2 years. This was removed from the final outcomes. This is because the Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever said he told reporters following that meeting he did not get the guarantees that he wanted from his European allies, nor the clarification from the European Commission regarding how this is actually going to be feasible as well as sound legally. He is worried that after the war wraps up, Russia will come knocking for that money, and he does not want to be the only country that fronts up the cash. But this is not the end of the road when it comes to the reparations loan. The leaders agreed to revisit the matter in December at the next Council summit.
Angela Skujins reporting from Brussels. Thank you, much appreciated. Meanwhile, India and China are suspending purchases of Russian oil. That's according to Reuters. The move follows US sanctions imposed on Wednesday against Lukoil and Rosneft, Russia's two largest oil companies. The sanctions could have ripple effects across Central and Eastern Europe, where Lukoil has significant business interests.
And now
enough is enough. After months of pursuing diplomacy, Donald Trump decided to apply pressure on Russia and Vladimir Putin.
There are massive sanctions, and sanctions on oil. The two biggest oil companies, among the biggest in the world, but they're Russian. They do a lot of oil.
These are the first sanctions on Russia imposed during Trump's second term. What's important? They contain a threat of secondary sanctions, which the US government can slap on any entity on the planet. The penalty? Banishment from the global financial system, a move that can cripple a business.
Potentially, these sanctions can be very impactful and quite significant because, as the Treasury outline flags, there are possible consequences, secondary sanctions, for the buyers of Russian oil.
The sanctions are designed to make it harder for Russia to push its crude on the global market, and commodity traders seem to believe this will be the case, as the price of crude went up on Wednesday by 5%, which is a lot.
Whenever the administration was using secondary sanctions, then it limited the sale of crude oil.
However, historically, Moscow demonstrated that it can adapt to sanctions and circumvent them to keep oil flowing, so vigilance is crucial.
The sanctions per se, it's not enough to introduce them, because Russia finds a way to circumvent them typically within 1-3 months. It varies, of course, but in general, it's not enough to just introduce sanctions and just let them be.
The sanctions are already biting, with media reports that India and China, the two biggest buyers of Russian oil, are winding down their purchases. The newest US sanctions will also reverberate throughout Central and Eastern Europe, as Lukoil owns refineries in Romania and Bulgaria and is a major oil supplier to Hungary and Slovakia.
Will Hungary and Slovakia manage to find Russian contractors who are not part of those sanctioned companies or who don't have access to them all? That will be very difficult.
But other analysts think those countries will be spared from the worst due to the EU's pledge to get rid of Russian crude.
It would be really strange if United States would do some actions against some member states when EU made already a deal on Monday and established the rules of gradual limiting the import of pipeline oil.
However, the sanctions are not seen as enough to win the war on their own. US officials instead view them as an invitation to the negotiating table.
We're always going to be interested in engaging if there's an opportunity to achieve peace. I think the president has said repeatedly for a number of months now that at some point he will have to do something if we don't make progress on the peace deal. Today was the day he decided to do something.
Let's see if Putin listens.
And on a domestic note, a military training drone fell on parked cars in the central Polish city of Inowrocław. No injuries have been reported. Military police are investigating the incident. The Polish state-owned defense company Polish Armaments Group confirmed one of its training military drones came down in Inowrocław on Thursday. The UAV belonged to one of Poland's largest military aviation development and testing centers, based in Bydgoszcz, around 40 kilometers north of Inowrocław. A police spokesperson said officers had received a report about an unmanned aerial vehicle, but, quote, the military police are handling the matter. The Russian military aircraft, an Su-30 fighter and Il-78 refueling tanker, briefly entered Lithuania's airspace on Thursday. The airspace's violation was condemned by the country's president, Gitanas Nausėda.
I strongly condemn the violation of Lithuanian airspace recently by the fighter jet and transport vehicle transport plane of Russian Federation from Kaliningrad region side. This is cruel violation of international law and territorial sovereignty of Lithuania, and we have to react to this.
Moscow's regional governor has claimed that a residential building was damaged in Krasnogorsk during an overnight drone attack. Andriy Vorobyov posted on Telegram that a drone flew into an apartment on the 14th floor of the building, according to Kyiv Independent. A Ukrainian drone was reported to have previously hit a building in the area in June. Vorobyov claimed 5 people were taken to hospital for treatment in the aftermath. Voting has started in Ireland's presidential election. The voters can choose between 2 candidates, left-wing Catherine Connolly and centre-right Heather Humphreys. Catherine Connolly is the frontrunner according to opinion polls. She is an independent candidate but has received backing from political party Sinn Féin. She is known for her strong stance against Israel. The other contender, Heather Humphreys, has campaigned on improving community links between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. The role of the president is largely ceremonial in the country. Their main task is to be a guardian of the constitution and a moderating voice. The Warsaw Stock Exchange is seeking an upgrade to developed market status in the coming years. Such a change could give Polish companies access to more foreign capital and raise the international standing of the Polish market. Maciej Wilnowski has more.
The Warsaw Stock Exchange seeks to ditch its emerging market status and join the exclusive club of developed markets. That's the ambition of Tomasz Bardziłowski, the exchange's CEO, who would like to see Poland reclassified as a developed market in 3 to 5 years. His ambition is backed by Poland's Minister of Finance and Economy, Andrzej Domański. That vision would require the approval of New York-based financial index provider MSCI, the official arbiter for classifying markets and exchanges. MSCI assigns countries one of 3 labels, developed, emerging, or frontier, based on factors like economic development, the size and liquidity of capital markets, and the ease with which foreign investors can access the local market. Poland and other countries in Central and Eastern Europe, including Hungary and the Czech Republic, are currently classified as emerging markets by MSCI. An upgrade to developed status would make Poland the first country among the region's post-communist states to reach that designation. It would also give the more than 400 companies listed on the Warsaw Stock Exchange access to more foreign capital and potentially raise Poland's allure as an investment destination. 2025 has been a stellar year for Polish stocks, with Poland's benchmark WIG index hitting new record highs. The rally has been driven largely by institutional investors, banks, asset managers, and mutual funds that manage money for their clients and have plenty at their disposal. Many of these come from abroad. But individual investors from Poland have been less involved. Data shows that Poles are particularly skeptical about investing in stocks, and many instead prefer bonds, real estate, or simply keeping their savings in the bank. Compared to the size of Poland's gross domestic product, the total market cap, or the value of all companies' shares listed on the Warsaw Stock Exchange, is relatively small. That ratio stands at just 22% compared to 64% in the EU as a whole and a whopping 170% in the United States. Figures like these indicate that the Polish stock market has a lot of room to grow, and attracting more investors, both at home and abroad, would go a long way toward achieving that. Maciej Wilowski for TVP World.
A Turkish court is expected to rule on a politically charged case against the main opposition party. If the 2023 leadership elections of the centrist CHP party are annulled, its popular leader Özel Özgül would be ousted from his position. The court in Istanbul is looking into claims that Özel's election as CHP party chairman was influenced by illegal payoffs. That could result in Özel being replaced by either a trustee appointed by the court or by Özel's disgraced predecessor, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, who lost to incumbent Recep Tayyip Erdogan in 2023's presidential election. The case mirrors that against the local chapter of the CHP in Istanbul in September, where the leadership was removed over vote-buying allegations. The CHP considers both cases part of a crackdown on the opposition by the ruling party of President Erdogan, the Islamist AKP. A number of opposition figures have been jailed, including Istanbul mayor and presidential hopeful Ekrem İmamoğlu last spring. Özel has since gained prominence as CHP leader, seeing the party rise in the polls and threatening the rule of AKP, which has been in place since 2002. North Korea has begun construction work on a memorial for its soldiers killed in Russia's war in Ukraine. A groundbreaking ceremony was held on Friday, the Korean Central News Agency has said. During the ceremony, Kim Jong-un said the ties between Russia and North Korea are at a, quote, historic peak, adding that they will continue developing. According to Pyongyang's leader, the memorial will feature sculptures of the soldiers that died while fighting for Russia, as well as photos and artwork depicting the fighting itself. In April, Ukrainian authorities estimated that North Korea had deployed more than 14,000 troops to support Russia in waging its war of terror in Ukraine. And with this, we conclude our news update. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for more.